When I found out about this fight, my reaction was I'm going to jump the Yarra. Hey guys, it's Joel from Southern Cross Combat. Doing something a little bit different today. I'm still in the old set, you know. This isn't too much of a difference. I am wearing a little bit more casual clothing though. Not that it matters if you're listening to this. But Anthony Drilich fights Sean Gauci tomorrow. And I've got some thoughts about this fight before it happens that I just want to kind of get out there. Because ever since I found out about this fight happening, when I broke the news at Southern Cross Combat, I have been bouncing off the walls for it. This fight is for all the marbles. This fight is everything for Australian flyweight mixed martial arts. This is incredibly validating for myself, may I say, as someone who has been looking at Anthony Drilich, Sean Gauci, and Stuart Nickel, and going, these are the best guys. Here they are. They're the best ones. So to have that validated by the UFC makes me feel good. But it's incredibly unique, and it's never happened before. And as far as I can recall, there's never been a moment where this has happened. The UFC is looking at Australian MMA and the Australian MMA scene and going, all right, well, let's figure out who's the best. Let's work out who of you gets the contract. They were stuck in the love triangle. Not too different to how the featherweights were stuck in a love triangle about a year ago with Khan Offley, Abdallah Biata, and Justin Van Heerden. Only the love triangle is kind of working itself out, but on the world stage. Stuart Nickel has been signed to the UFC. He competed at UFC 305. And Drilich and Gauci are now going to fight each other to answer the question of who's the best local guy. Who is the best regional flyweight in Australia. This is a fight that is incredibly important. This fight, I know I've already said it, but this fight is for all the marbles. This fight is to prove, because if you got signed the Dana White's Contender series, look at it. We'll use an Aaron Toe as an example, right? Or Cameron Ralston. I think Cameron Ralston, I think, is a better example of this, purely because he's booked, right? Cam Ralston leaves, he goes to fight on Contender, and it doesn't work out for him, right? He can return to the Australian scene, and there can be a person for him to fight. You know, due to the closeness between himself and Ben Johnston, I understand that that's not the fight to make. Like, those two guys probably won't fight each other. But there is something for him to come back to. Because of Stuart Nickel being gone and being signed, the loser of this matchup between Gauci and Drilich is left in limbo. Because, and this is no disrespect to Frank Jankowski, I've asked both men, Gauci and Drilich, you can see that in those interviews I've done with them, who is the next man in line? Who is the successor to their throne? Both of their thrones. And both of them have named Frank Jankowski as that man. However, in the situation where Gauci is victorious tomorrow, we've seen Drilich versus Jankowski. And that's fine. That's a fine fight to run back. And then, yes, if Drilich wins, then we haven't seen Gauci versus Jankowski before. So that does leave something on the table. But outside of Frank, who is then the next guy after that, there hasn't been a clear... Australian mixed martial arts is in an incredibly odd position because of how well they're doing on Dana White's Contender series. The UFC this season has seemed to have come into the region cherry-picked some of the best talent. There's a lot of good guys that got left behind, but cherry-picked some of the best talent and has possibly left some other regions bare. And so it creates a very unique situation for both Drilich and Gauci where they can't afford to lose this fight. They can't. Because there isn't anything clearly to return to. There isn't a clear path back to the Holy Land, to the promised land of the UFC. We've seen people go off, have fights that could get them into the UFC, and come back, and then there is something for them, and you can see a clear path back. You know, Lisa Kiriaku's an example of that. She lost on road to UFC, came back to Australia, and fought a former UFC fighter. So those things exist. However, there is... The stakes are very high, and that's just, we're talking about the stakes. We haven't even talked about the fighters yet. Anthony Drilich, a guy who in his first fight, or one of his first fights, fought an alleged neo word that I can't say because of YouTube censoring, I believe, but you know, a gentleman who wouldn't be thrilled fighting a man like Anthony, or maybe he would be too thrilled. Maybe that would be his problem. Watch my interview with Anthony Drilich if you want to know about that story. He fought a man who allegedly had a tattoo of a hate symbol on his chest. That's the first or second time Drilich is stepping into the cage. And he's fighting someone like that. And I think it was out of WA too. I think it was in South Australia. So he's fighting away from home. He was 16 or 17. He had to have an adult accompanying him into the venue because the venue was a bar. And to go through that journey, a journey of putting people away. A guy who fought at a higher weight class and is as he took the game more serious and as he began to become a better fighter, his weight stopped fluctuating. And he eventually sits at flyweight. He's a 3-time Eternal Flyweight champion. He's got 3 belts. There's that photo of him with all 3 of the titles. A man who erases people. He's been christened the hardest hitting flyweight. A man who... I fear that hand. He posted a photo the other day on his social media of him over in Vegas, and he's holding an RPG. And I told him, just when I thought that hand couldn't get any more scary. Guy's got dynamite in his hands. A guy who... It's the game of fighting Anthony Drilich is... Don't get hit by him. Because if he hits you, he sinks you. That seems to be how it goes. You know? And then you look at the other side. You look at a guy like Sean Gauci, a guy who moved away from home. Who left family behind. He was training in Melbourne. Training at Dominance. Left family behind. He took a job up in Queensland. Started training with the Death Squad. The Dunstan Death Squad. And has gone on this run. Who had these issues. Whose body tried to quit on him. His body tried to give out on him when he was fighting at bantamweight. But he stuck on the path, and he had those conversations with Ryan Dunstan about really committing to it. And he got everything under control. And he made flyweight after multiple fights where they didn't happen. Both for on his side and opponent's side. He had multiple fights cancelled. He goes over to New Zealand, stops his opponent after that much time outside of the cage to do that. And I spoke to him. Look, you can, as I mentioned, you can look at my interviews with Drilich and Gauci to kind of get their thoughts on this. You can look at my interview with Ryan Dunstan. We talk about this. This is all the marbles. This is for everything. You know, this is a fight that I think we're going to look back on, and it breaks my heart. This fight breaks my heart. Because both of these guys are so good. And the concept that one of them isn't going to make it. The concept that one of these guys won't make it is heartbreaking, and unfair, but it's an unfair game. MMA is an unfair game. It's a cruel mistress, as a smart man once said to me. Shout out to Dan. But I can't believe we got this fight. When I found out about this fight, my reaction was, I'm going to jump the Yarra. I was bouncing off the walls. This is something that the Australian MMA scene has been wanting for so long. This is East Coast versus West Coast. This is KO power versus high-level speed and high-level grappling. But to say that, both of these guys have it. It's not really that. I'm immediately contradicting myself. It's the two best guys in the country fighting to secure their dream. Today, as of recording this, I just spoke to Cody Haden, man who's making his UFC debut this weekend. That interview should be out either later today when you're watching this or later in the week ahead of his debut. But we were talking about this, and he was talking about the work that gets put into something like this and the doubts that creep in and the people around you who don't believe in you. And that's not an insult to any of the people who surround a fighter. But he talks about this concept of people around you want what's best for you. And sometimes when you're in the thick of it and fights are falling out, or you're in the midst of training and there's no hear back from the UFC, you don't know if it's worth it. No one does. When you're doing anything, I don't know if me doing this interview stuff is going to be worth it. No one knows. But we're all kind of doing it blindly with the hope that one day it works out. And that is what these men have experienced. That's what Anthony Drilich and Sean Gauci have experienced. And now they are on the road. They are on the path. They are on the doorstep. And that's a phrase I use a lot, but it is that. It is right there. The only man standing in their way is the man that they've been only hearing about for over a year. The man that everyone has been comparing the other to. A man from the other side of the country who is also a champion, who is beating people. And for whatever reason, that fight never happened. It was going to happen in Eternal. It was going to happen in Hex. I've heard that there was a period of time where, yes, that fight was going to happen, but it never quite got over the line. And now this fight's happening on the other side of the planet, in the biggest organization on the world. Well, kind of. As Cody Haden mentioned in our interview, go check that out. Dana White's Contender Series is owned by the UFC, but it is not the UFC. But now that fight's happening. And it has been given the stage I feel both of those men deserve. It is a fight that could not have happened. It's a fight that we've been wanting to happen, but a fight that wasn't guaranteed. Because we've seen things like this before, where maybe the two best guys don't cross paths. And that's fine too. If they both make it into the UFC, that's awesome. But there is this scenario where this fight gets the stage that it deserves. And I can't be more excited, and I can't be more nervous, because I like both guys, and I care about both guys. I've spoken to both of them many a time. And I don't know how this fight's going to play out. I really don't. Both guys have asked me my thoughts on this fight when I saw them. And I said the same thing to both of them. I really don't know. Because it could end at any moment. Both of these guys are finishers. The fight will be on tomorrow, as of the recording of this, as of the day this gets released. It will be on, in Australia, Wednesday the 9th of October, on Dana White's Contender Series on the UFC Fight Pass. It starts at 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time due to daylight savings. It's typically 10, but now it's 11, if I'm not mistaken. And I will be doing a live reaction to it here on the YouTube channel. We'll be doing a live reaction, probably just for that fight, give our thoughts on it. So if you want to swing by the YouTube channel, please do. Southern Cross Combat on YouTube. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the point of this video was, aside from just to get my passionate ramblings out. But let me know if you guys liked a video like this. Let me know what you think of the fight in the comments down below. I will see you tomorrow right here on YouTube. If you listen to this on Spotify, follow us on YouTube, please. Southern Cross Combat on Instagram, Southern Cross Combat on YouTube, southerncrosscombat.com. And yeah, let me know what you thought of this style of video, if you'd like to see more. And yeah. May the best flyweight win. I've been Joel Rasmussen. Thank you very much for your time.